Hey guys, Gerald Hall with Rhino Shield here, and we want to talk today about the 4 key things that you need to know if you're considering putting Rhino Shield or really any premium coating on your home that's going to help you avoid common problems and costly mistakes that other home and business owners have made when it comes to the big 4 of testing. And I'm here now with Mike Moore. Mike is our Director of Product Technology here at Rhino Shield. So Mike, I know we're going to talk about the big 4 of testing here, but independent third-party lab tests are really important, and we're big on them here at Rhino Shield. How many of those tests will you run, different tests will you run in a given year?
Oh, we hire out usually at least 15 different types of tests on coatings. It could be for very specific applications, or it could be for overall performance on the coating. But yeah, having independent testing is the best way to ensure that you're making the best paint possible.
And so Mike, when I say the big 4 of testing, what does that mean?
Well, we need some core properties in all of our coatings. And the 4 that we start with are adhesion, permeance, elongation, which we call flexibility, and also tensile strength. So all the coatings need to have those properties as the foundation.
So Mike, when I hear the word adhesion, that sounds pretty self-explanatory, but when we're talking about adhesion as it relates to exterior coatings, tell me about that.
I mean, it basically is the ability for the coating to stay on the wall, both short-term and long-term.
Sure.
And it's something that a lot of people, they don't understand the importance of it. And at AMCoat, it's fundamental because we make coatings that last a long time, and long-term and short-term adherence is what we focus on. It's what we test. It's what we formulate for.
So how much pressure does it take to pull that coating off the wall? And that's measured in PSI, right? Pounds per square inch?
We do both pounds per square inch and pounds per linear inch.
Okay.
Okay, and then there's also field testing. First, it starts with preparation. So the reason that we want a professional paint job is that we need a clean, dry, tight surface with some profile to bond to. So once we prepare it, then we use the best formulas so that it's going to stay on that surface for the long term.
Right, so I tell people all the time at home shows or in homes, it really doesn't matter how good my product is or your installation if the surface isn't prepped properly, right? So
that is correct.
Number 1 job is to make sure the surface is prepped.
But
right?
I think most painters and a lot of paint companies, they overlook the importance of a primer. So when you talk about adhesion, the primer is the most important because that's what goes
First thing that
directly
touches
to
the
the
surface.
surface.
Yep.
And so we have some very unique primers, things that you won't find at hardware stores or paint stores. And when we apply those primers, we get fantastic adhesion.
So Mike, any other elements that we want to consider when we're talking about preparation of the house?
Yeah, in coastal areas, eliminating salt is very important. So we're near the beach. Yeah. Rhino Shield's used a lot in the tropics, in the Caribbean, in Africa, in areas that have salt. And the reason that they like us is salt is very hard on all building materials. It's corrosive and it's hard on paint. So when we clean, we have to make sure that we get the salt off. It's most important on metal, and there are some very specific cleaners that you use to neutralize the chlorides and salts. And if you don't, you will not get long-term adherence.
It's pretty, a self-explanatory subject like adhesion really gets a little more complex when you talk about putting a coating on the outside of a house or a business, correct?
Right,
Yeah.
and you need a painter that knows what he's doing, he understands his environments and conditions, that they inspect the house to see what's on the home, and then they clean properly.
All right, Mike, so we know all of the elements in prepping for adhesion, but how is adhesion measured?
So we use ASTM testers, so it's a standardized method so you can compare like building materials.
And so it's measured in PSI, and Rhino Shield, in our most popular system, which is our APS and DFC, it pulled at 709 pounds per square inch. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, you have a mechanical pull with an adhesive, and the job is to pull it off the substrate. And ours took over 700 pounds per square inch to pull it off. And in fact, it didn't pull the coating off the substrate pulled apart. So it would actually
concrete block.
It would remove it would separate the concrete, or it would separate the wood before our product would release.
Wow, 709 PSI to pull our product
We're
off.
stronger than the substrate.
That's awesome. So Mike, next up we're going to talk about permeance. Can you define that for me?
Most people would think of permeance as breathable.
Okay.
Can some air and some vapors escape through the building material and through the paint?
So all that steam from the shower or from the pots and pans on the stove,
right,
it's got to go somewhere, right?
Right, and if it can't, if you have a coating that traps it, then you can end up with mildew, you can end up with rot. So it's very important that we have a breathable coating system. And a lot of thick protective coating systems aren't breathable. And these might be things that you use on metal where it doesn't need to breathe, or on a roof where it doesn't need to breathe. With Rhino Shield, using it on building walls and materials like wood, stucco, brick, block, they need to breathe. Vapors need to be released. And our product is very permeable, especially for how thick it is. We get US perm rates, and that's how they measure it in US perms, typically between 13 and 16. We also test as a system, because
that system is a primer and a top coat, right, put together. So
and a lot of manufacturers don't test as a system, and you're deceiving yourself if you don't test as a system, because that's how it's applied in the field. It's how you need to test it in the lab.
Absolutely, and so you need a fully permeable, fully breathable coating to allow all those water vapors and the moisture to get out of the home, to avoid things like you said, like mildew and rot.
It's all part of having a healthy home.
All right. So Mike, one of the key elements when we talk about the big four of testing is elongation. Can you explain to me and to the folks at home kind of what elongation means?
Sure, it's basically flexibility. Can the coating
Why can't we
stretch?
just say flexibility then,
Can
right?
it move? Because that's what the industry terms it, is elongation. And but it's measured in flexibility, how much the product can stretch before it tears. It is measured as in literally a percentage. So when they pull it, what percent can flex? And if you want a product that is an elastomeric, that means that it has 100% flexibility.
So elongation is measured in percentage. And do you remember how the Rhino Shield system scored?
The Rhino Shield consistently, it depends on base and sheen, but it's typically in the 400 to 500 range, far more than what is required to be an elastomeric. More importantly, we age the product and we test it to make sure that it has flexibility for the long term.
So when we use an independent third-party lab test, you know, one of the cool things that I find that we do here is using the QUV lamp, so that accelerates the aging of the product. So we're not just testing fresh product out of the can.
We test it both ways, but there are aging chambers that accelerate aging, and all types of materials are put in there, fabrics, other building materials, and paints and coatings, and you flood it with moisture cycles, UVA rays, UVB rays, the same type of things that will destroy any product.
So not just light, not just like a QUV lamp, it accelerates it with all of the elements that, you know,
we do hot and cold, we do light and dark, we do UVA and UVB rays.
So Mike, elongation, or as we like to simply call it, flexibility, why is that important when you're talking about an exterior coating on your home or business?
Well, it's important so that the paint or the coating doesn't crack over time.
Okay.
So when you have buildings move. So they expand and contract during changes in weather, or just settling.
So when it gets really, really hot and then it gets really, really cold.
Or really hot and moist and dry, the building materials will expand and contract, and just basic settling of the home. We've all seen cracks when a building settles. So a good paint will move with the substrate, and it will not crack, and it will do it over the long haul. So what I brought is an example of ours. So this is a nice coating, and you can bend it all you want in any direction, and it simply will not, it's not going to crack. It moves with the building. Yeah,
I mean, so you mentioned that it has to score at 100% to be an elastomeric, and the Rhino Shield system that we sent off to the third-party lab test scored a 495% elongation or flexibility with the Rhino Shield system.
Correct, and even more importantly, it does so after we age it.
Right, so kind of the purpose of all four of these key points, if you're considering investing in a premium coating system, or really any coating system for your home, is to ask for that testing data. You'd want to see how those other products test. I tell my guys all the time, if you're getting, if you're having somebody out in your home and they tell you, hey, my product's great, that's awesome. If I say it, it can be questioned, but if the lab says it, it's true, right?
Well, when we do commercial work, the specifiers, which are typically engineers or architects, they ask for that ASTM testing. They want to know that
and homeowners can do that too, right? Absolutely.
They should.
Yeah.
They should.
And that's the purpose, is ask for the testing data in these four areas that we're talking about.
Correct.
So Mike, the next area we want to talk about when we talk about the big four of testing is tensile strength. And how would you define tensile strength, and explain it to me as though I were just, didn't have any knowledge of it?
I would kind of consider it how tough the coating is, how hard it is to damage the coating. It's how much force it requires to rip the coating apart.
Okay.
It's somewhat related.
So breaking the coating, if you will.
It's somewhat related to elongation, but it's different. And why this is important on a home is that your home will get abused besides just weather. It can get banged with packages. It can get hit with hail, with golf balls, with limbs falling on the tree.
Kids hitting baseballs, things
What
like
does it take to actually rip or tear the coating?
How do you measure tensile strength?
It's a pull test, and it's how many pounds per square inch it takes to tear apart the coating.
Okay, great. And the Rhino Shield systems that are most commonly used out there for walls and roofs, how do they score?
Most of them are over 200 pounds per square inch.
200 PSI to break the coating. That's pretty cool.
Right, it's excellent.
Now, Mike, I know we said we were going to do the big 4 of testing, but there's a test that we run at Rhino Shield that is really, really cool in my opinion, and that's the federal wind-driven rain test. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, we just got back good results again on that test. What happens is they take a building material, usually it's a block, they coat it with your material, your coating material, and then they fire water at 98 miles per hour over a gallon a minute for 24 straight hours. They just try to penetrate that building product like it would happen in a hurricane. And then at the end of 24 hours, they evaluate to see if any rain got past our coating or whatever building material they're testing.
Right, and that's a pass-fail test. If water gets past that coating, it just doesn't pass, right?
And ours did perfect again.
Yeah.
So that's why we're very popular, on the coast, the Caribbean, and areas where that's important.
And really, I was just in Utah, and they get good hard rains there in the summertime too. And so any coating, when we put it on the wall, Mother Nature starts taking her jabs at it. And this 98-mile-an-hour wind-driven rain test just boggles my mind that they can shoot a jet of water at it for 24 hours and nothing gets past it.
Won't get through Rhino Shield.
Awesome. Bonus number 5. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We hope you learned something about the big 4 of testing. And Mike, thanks for joining us. Always learn something when we get together and we talk coatings, man. Appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Take care.